All right, diving right in. Today we're tackling Kant.
Kant on education.
It's specifically, his thoughts on education.
Yeah.
And,
Big topic.
yeah, it's a dense one.
It is. It is really fascinating.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, every time I even just dip my toe in, I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
so much to unpack, so much to think about.
Yeah.
But I think we can get some good takeaways
I think so too.
for everybody listening.
Yeah.
One of the things that always strikes me about Kant is
He's such a systematizer.
he
But he's also really practical in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, so he doesn't see education as just like, okay, here's a bunch of facts.
Right.
Go memorize them.
It's not just rote memorization. It's
Oh,
about
yeah.
how we become who we are as human beings.
Yeah, it's shaping us as people.
Yeah.
And one of the quotes that always kind of blows my mind.
Sure.
He says, "Man is the only being who needs education." What do you think he meant by that?
Well, I mean, he's really emphasizing, I think, this distinction between our animal nature
Oh, okay.
and our human nature. And he's saying that
So like we're born with
certain
instincts and
capacities
Yeah.
and tendencies and all that.
yeah.
But education is the thing
I don't think so.
that makes us
Wait, so
into fully realized human beings.
Okay, so what does that process look like?
Well, he breaks it down into four key elements, I guess you could say.
Okay.
Nurture, discipline, instruction, and culture.
Okay, break those down for me a little bit.
So nurture is kind of the foundational stuff.
Okay.
You know, the basic care, the feeding, the keeping us safe and all that
We all need.
that we all need as infants and children.
Right.
But then comes discipline. And this is
Yeah.
a really key.
This is where it gets tricky.
This is where it gets tricky.
I think
Yeah, because, you know.
a lot of people hear discipline and they think
Right.
punishment, restriction.
Right. And it's not quite that for Kant. I mean, it does have an element of restraint in it,
Okay.
but it's really about learning to control our impulses
Okay.
to defer gratification.
Okay, so it's about self-control.
It's about self-control.
Which, I mean, I can see how that's important, but how does that lead
Yeah.
to you
Right.
becoming more free?
So he's got this interesting image that
Yeah.
he uses
Okay.
where he compares a tree growing out in the middle of a field
Okay.
all by itself
Yeah.
to a tree that's growing in a forest surrounded by other trees.
Okay.
And his point is that the lone tree,
It just sprawls out.
it sprawls out every which way. It's
Yeah.
kind of, you know,
Misshapen.
it's kind of, you know,
No clear direction.
right. But the tree in the forest grows tall and straight
Because it's got to compete for light.
because it's got to compete.
Oh, I see. So it's like
Right.
by
Well,
having
maybe
these
not.
constraints, these limits,
Victim resistance.
it actually thrives.
More.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he's applying that analogy to human development.
I see.
He's saying, that a certain amount of restraint
Yeah.
actually helps us to become stronger.
So all those times when we're told no, or
Right.
we have to push through something challenging, that's actually helping us
That's part of the process.
develop our character.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but then how far does he take that?
Right.
Because I think, there's...
Well, he was very wary
Yeah.
of overindulgence,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
especially in parenting.
So he wouldn't have been a fan of the participation trophy.
Probably not. He worried that constantly giving into a child's whims
Yeah. Okay.
would basically create these little despots.
Little dictators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that they wouldn't be able to handle it.
And
Yeah.
any kind of pushback
The real world.
from the real world.
Right. So it's almost like,
So there's a balance there.
yeah, it's like you're giving them the tools,
You got to deal with
the real world, not help them develop that inner strength, that
No.
resilience.
Yeah, you're not doing them any favors by
By making everything easy for them.
coddling them.
No.
Okay.
And then we get to this other really fascinating piece.
All right, so let's go to the next one then, which is
This is
I think it was instruction.
well, instruction's important, but
Or is it learning by doing?
yeah, learning by doing.
Let's talk about that. I'm really curious about your take on this.
Well, Kant wasn't a big fan
Nothing.
of relying too heavily on tools or aids
Okay.
for learning.
Interesting. So he
He thought direct experience.
was very hands-on
He was very much so, yeah.
Okay.
He even tells this anecdote.
about Benjamin Franklin learning to swim.
I love that story.
Right.
Yeah. Tell it. Remind everybody.
So Franklin he was trying to learn to swim,
Yeah.
and he had all these devices and things that people,
Right, like these contraptions.
these contraptions
Yeah.
that were supposed to help,
Right.
but he wasn't really getting it.
Yeah.
So what he did was he took an egg
Yeah.
and he dropped it in the water
Okay.
and then tried to reach for it. And of course, in trying to reach for it, he had to figure out
Yeah.
how to stay afloat.
To actually swim.
Right. He had to actually use his body
Yeah.
in a way.
Instead of relying on these external things.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a really interesting example
It is.
of
What do you think? I mean, it's so counterintuitive.
It is,
Right.
but it makes sense.
Because we want to protect kids
Right.
from failure.
Yeah. But he's saying, those natural consequences
Yeah.
are actually really important
Yeah.
for learning.
Because you learn from those mistakes.
You learn from the experience.
So how do we apply that today?
Right. That's
the big question.
Right. I mean, it seems
really hard.
Yeah. I mean, how do we create those opportunities
Right.
for that kind of authentic hands-on learning
In a world of screens.
in a world of screens, yeah.
Right.
Where everything's
Where everything's virtual,
Right.
safe, and
Yeah.
there's no real risk.
That's a question Kant himself might have,
Yeah.
grappled with.
I would be interested to see what he would say.
Right.
But I mean, he did have some specific ideas, right?
He did. He advocated for things like,
Yeah.
climbing, running, throwing, playing games, like,
Okay.
blind man's buff and things like that. So he's almost like a playground advocate.
He is in a way, yeah.
Never would have pictured that.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's all about engaging.
But he saw the value in that physical development.
Right, both body and mind.
And how it shapes.
And how it shapes our character and our ability to interact with the world.
So he's really getting at
He's ahead of his time in a lot of ways.
the mind-body connection there, which I mean, I think even today,
Which we're just now starting to really understand.
Right, exactly. And it's like he was already onto something there hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about nurture, we've talked about discipline,
Mhm.
we've talked about learning by doing.
Right.
The next piece was instruction.
Right. And that's where we get into the mental cultivation.
Yeah,
Right.
because it's not just about the physical. Right, it's not just about, being able to climb a tree.
Right.
It's also about
It's about, developing our minds.
developing our minds, yeah.
Okay.
And so what's interesting is he makes this distinction between what he calls free mental cultivation,
Okay.
which is more playful and exploratory,
Okay.
and scholastic cultivation,
So that's the more structured.
which is more structured.
Okay.
Like,
So that's the school stuff.
that's the school stuff.
Okay, so he's saying both are important.
Both are important.
Right.
He sees value.
But they serve different purposes.
Serve different functions.
Like, I can see that. Because, I mean, I think we all have those things that we are
Arts
naturally
experts.
drawn to.
Right, where you get into that flow state.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's like effortless.
And you just want to
Exactly.
do it for the sake of doing it.
But then there's also this stuff where it's like, okay, I gotta learn this
Right.
because it's important for my job or for whatever.
Yeah.
So he's saying you need both of those things.
He's saying you both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's
And he really emphasizes
Yeah.
the importance of cultivating
a work ethic.
the work ethic. Yeah.
Okay, which can be hard,
Which can be hard,
especially today.
especially today when there's so many distractions.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the, I mean, I know you've studied this stuff in depth.
Yeah.
What are some of the other key
Well, one of the things he's really interested in
Right.
is how the different mental faculties
Okay.
work together.
Okay.
So he's got this I guess you could say hierarchy,
Okay.
where he's got intelligence,
Oh, yeah.
serving understanding,
plan.
judgment, applying understand, and then reason kind of
Connecting them up.
connecting it all.
Oh, I see.
So it's this really intricate.
So he's really emphasizing the importance of critical thinking.
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
He is, and one of the things he was kind of, I don't know, I guess you could say, down on.
What was he down on?
He was not a big fan of novel reading.
Interesting.
Yeah, and his thinking there was that.
Why not? Why was he against that?
Well, he he thought that it overstimulated the imagination
Right.
without providing much
Without any real substance.
practical benefit.
Okay.
He was much more of
He was more of a facts guy.
yeah, like a factual text kind of guy.
Right. So he's all about that practical application.
Yeah, so,
Which, I mean, that's fair.
right.
But
But I think you could also
I feel like, good stories can teach us a lot to
his
it.
concerns
Yeah, so how do we reconcile those two things?
as a kind of a caution against passive consumption.
Oh, okay.
Right. It's not so much about
Yeah.
the novels themselves.
So it's not about the medium.
Right.
It's about
It's about how we engage with them.
how we engage with it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So if
Okay.
we're just passively
So if you're just mindlessly
right.
scrolling through TikTok
Right. Yeah.
or binge watching Netflix.
That's not doing you any good.
Right.
But if you're reading a novel,
But if you're really engaging with
yeah,
it,
thinking about
thinking about it.
yeah, exactly. Analyzing it,
And then
you're
again-
discussing it with others.
Yeah, you're making connections to your own life.
Right.
Okay, I see.
That's where the real learning happens.
Yeah, so he's
Right.
he's all about
And speaking of really processing information,
yeah.
another
Go ahead.
key idea that he emphasizes is the Socratic method.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, he was a big proponent of
So that's all about asking questions.
drawing out
Yeah.
ideas through questioning
Yeah.
rather than just
Instead of just giving the answer.
right, imposing knowledge.
Okay. Which is a harder way to teach, honestly.
It is a harder way to teach.
It is, but it's more effective.
But he would argue that it's more effective
Yeah.
in the long run
I can see that
because it forces the person
because it gets the person to actually think for themselves.
to think for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to see how all these pieces are fitting together.
It's all interconnected.
Right.
Right.
It's not just about
It's not just about
memorizing facts.
memorizing facts. It's
Yeah.
about shaping our character.
Developing our whole selves.
And for Kant,
Right.
education wasn't just about
And this is where it gets,
even more interesting.
Yeah.
Because, for him, education wasn't just about,
yeah.
mental gymnastics. It was deeply intertwined with moral development.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Right. And for Kant, morality wasn't simply about following rules.
Oh, interesting.
It was about internalizing what he called maxims.
Okay, what are maxims?
So maxims are basically like guiding principles
Right.
that shape our actions.
So it's the intention behind the action.
It's the deeper why
Okay,
behind behind our
I'm
behavior.
with you.
Yeah.
So it's not just, okay, don't do this because you'll get punished.
Right.
It's don't do this because it's wrong.
It's don't do this because it goes against who you are as a moral being.
As a person.
Right.
Right,
And
yeah.
he uses the example of lying.
Okay, classic example.
Right.
But I like how he
Right.
approaches it.
So instead of just focusing on punishment,
Okay.
he thought it was more effective
Oh, yeah.
to appeal to a child's
Yeah.
developing sense.
So you're appealing to their better nature.
You're appealing to their sense of honor
Okay.
and to help them understand
Yeah, I see.
why honesty.
So like you're not just telling them what to do, you're
Yeah.
explaining the why.
You're helping them to understand the why.
And that's how they internalize.
And that's how they internalize it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so true moral character.
Right. It's not something that's
Doing the-
imposed from the outside.
So it's imposed from the outside.
So it's something that grows from within.
Okay, I like that. So how do we cultivate that? How do we help kids
Right.
develop that?
Well, he stressed the importance of
Okay.
forming good habits early on.
Oh, okay, like what?
So things like punctuality, following routines, being truthful,
Okay.
even when it's difficult.
Okay, so those little things,
Those little things
Yeah.
he saw as the building blocks.
laying the foundation.
Yeah, laying the foundation
Yeah.
for moral character.
It's like that, I think it's Aristotle who said, we are what we repeatedly do.
Right.
Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit.
Exactly.
So it's those little things.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And for Kant, it wasn't just about the actions themselves.
Okay.
It was also about the underlying intention.
Okay.
Right. He even talked about using contempt as a moral punishment.
Whoa, okay, hold on. Let's unpack that.
Right.
Because that sounds...
Now, he doesn't mean this in a
Yeah.
cruel or demeaning way,
Right.
but rather as a way of appealing to
Oh.
a child's desire
Okay.
to be loved
Goes like...
and respected.
Right.
So it's like,
hey, I'm disappointed in you.
hey, you're better than this.
Right? You're better than this.
Right. I know you can do better.
Mm.
So it's appealing to their sense of
So you're using that social pressure.
you're using
Yeah,
that social
yeah,
pressure
yeah.
as a motivator.
The motivation is coming
And
from,
the motivation is coming from wanting to live up to
yeah, wanting to
a good
intense.
person.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just avoid punishment.
Okay.
Right.
So it's subtle, but
It's subtle, but
Yeah.
it's really important.
it's powerful.
It's powerful, yeah.
Okay.
And it makes you think about, how that idea
Well,
plays out
In different cultures.
in different cultures, yeah,
Right.
in different social contexts.
Because, what might be seen as,
Right. Shaming in one culture
right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
might be perfectly acceptable in another.
So you have to be sensitive to that.
Right, so it's
It's a delicate balance.
It is, yeah. All right, so we've done nurture, we've done discipline, we've done learning by doing, we've done
And we've kind of touched on instruction
instruction, yeah, with
with the Socratic method
yeah, with the Socratic method and
and the faculties.
the hierarchy of faculties, yeah.
Right.
Okay, and then the last piece
And this is
is
where
the culture.
Kant's views might
Privacy.
surprise you a little bit.
Really? How so?
Yeah, because he was actually hesitant
Okay.
to introduce religion
Interesting.
too early
Okay.
in a child's education.
Okay.
And this might seem counterintuitive.
Yeah, because you think, okay, morality, religion, those go.
You think,
Yeah.
you think, they should be learned together.
Okay, but what was his thinking there?
Well, his argument was that young children lack the capacity to fully grasp.
They're not developed enough
They're not developmentally ready to
No.
really understand
to grapple with those.
the complexities of religious doctrine.
Okay, so he's saying morality first.
He believed that moral development should come first,
Oh, okay.
emphasizing that
In-
internal
in-
law
So religion can come later.
of conscience.
Okay.
Right. And then religion could be introduced later as
Yeah.
a way
As a way of, kind of
yeah.
building on that
building on that moral foundation.
mental foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So he's not against religion.
No, he's not against religion.
He just thinks there's a proper time and place for it.
He's wary
He's
of
wary of what?
excessive ritual and prayer.
Okay.
Seeing them as potential opiates for the conscience.
Oh, interesting.
If they weren't accompanied by genuine moral action.
So it's not just about
So he's saying it's not just about
saying the right words or
going through the motions.
going through the motions.
Going-
It's about
It's about actually living it.
living, embodying those principles.
Okay, I like that.
Um,
And that really connects back, I think, to
Right.
his emphasis on moral development
right.
coming before
You build that foundation.
you build that foundation first.
yeah.
And then
And then you can kind of layer.
you can layer on
Yeah.
the religious
Okay, so it's like a
aspects.
progression.
It's correct, yeah.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here
We have.
with Kant.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of bring it back to our listener. Like what's the takeaway here?
Well, I mean, I think one of the remarkable things about Kant is how relevant
Yeah.
his ideas are.
He was way ahead of his time
This today.
in so many things.
Yeah.
In a world of information overload,
Yeah.
his emphasis on critical thinking,
Yeah.
moral development,
Yeah.
inner strength.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels more important than ever.
It does. It does.
And I think, you think about the challenges
Yeah.
you face in your own life.
Yeah.
How often
Yeah.
do you need to sift through information,
Right?
make difficult decisions,
Mm-hmm.
stay resilient
Yeah.
in the face of setbacks?
Kant's giving us the tools.
Kant's ideas offer a framework
Yeah.
for navigating
with
those complexities.
all that stuff. It's like he's wise old mentor.
A wise old mentor
Yeah.
whispering
in our ears.
guidance in our ears, even centuries later.
All right. So, and as we move towards the final chapters of On Education,
Yeah.
Kant turns his attention to guiding youth into adulthood.
Hmm.
And this is where he tackles those bigger life questions.
Right, those big existential questions.
Yeah, about navigating relationships,
Yeah.
finding purpose,
Purpose.
dealing with social inequalities.
Yeah, the
stuff that really matters.
the stuff that really matters. And
And one of the things that struck me
yeah.
was his perspective on
Yeah.
sexual development,
Okay.
which was, I mean, it was surprisingly
Yeah.
progressive
Yeah, first time.
for his time.
Right.
I mean, he warned against self-gratification,
Okay.
not just for moral reasons.
Interesting.
but because he saw it as
Yeah.
ultimately weakening.
So it's both body and mind.
It's not just about the morality.
Right.
It's about,
It's
the
about
effect it has
in the person.
on you as a person.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, that connects back
It does.
to his ideas
To his ideas about self-control.
about self-control.
Yeah.
About channeling
Channeling that energy.
our energy into
Yeah.
productive
Yeah. Okay. And so,
So,
what about the topic of social inequality?
right, because
I'm curious. Obviously, he lived in a time
Yeah.
when there were
rigid hierarchies.
very rigid social hierarchies.
Yeah, so how did he deal with that?
Well, he acknowledged
Yeah.
the realities of those structures,
Yeah.
but he believed
Yeah.
that children should be raised with a sense of their own inherent worth,
Okay.
regardless.
So like your worth as a person
Right.
is not tied to
Social standing.
your social standing.
Right, so it's not about
Okay.
where you fall.
So it's not, you're
I
not
think I can
better than someone
rule that.
because you have a higher
No,
social standing.
It's about
Yeah.
fostering self-esteem.
Yeah.
That's based
So it's like you are valuable
on absolute worth,
because you are you.
Yeah.
Not because of
not because of
your title or your
Yeah.
wealth or your
status.
status.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that's good. That's good.
And I think that's what makes Kant's educational philosophy
Yeah.
so enduring.
It's timeless in a lot of ways.
It's timeless, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just about acquiring
Knowledge or skills.
the bigger picture.
It's about
Yeah.
becoming
Yeah.
fully realized human beings.
Yeah, becoming a good person.
Right, who can navigate
Yeah.
the complexities of the world
Yeah.
with integrity.
With integrity and purpose. Yeah. Yeah. It's a roadmap, almost.
He's offering us
Yeah. It's a
kind of a roadmap.
roadmap for life.
Yeah.
And it's all grounded in reason and virtue.
And what's particularly fascinating is that
Yeah.
he didn't just offer abstract theories.
Sure.
He gave very specific advice
Yeah.
for young people.
Yeah, like what? Remind me some of his...
Remember how he urged them to be cheerful,
Okay.
even-tempered,
Okay.
conscientious,
Yeah.
benevolent,
Yeah.
and focused on inner worth
Okay.
rather than
So not focused on...
material possessions.
Yeah, the external stuff.
Right. So
It's all about the internal.
it's like a
Character development.
checklist.
Yeah.
For character development.
Okay, and I think that
And those are
values
those are values
that we want to
Definitely.
instill in future
I think in
generations.
particular
Right.
time or culture.
Okay, so it's timeless.
It's timeless, yeah.
And it highlights...
And it highlights how Kant
Yeah.
saw education as
Yeah.
an ongoing process.
It's not just something that...
Not something that ends with a diploma, right?
It stops at graduation.
It's a lifelong
It's a lifelong pursuit.
responsibility to cultivate our minds, our hearts, our
Yeah.
characters.
So we never stop learning.
We never stop learning.
And we never stop growing.
And we never stop growing.
Yeah, I like that.
Right.
So we've spent the last couple parts here really getting deep into Kant's ideas on education.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
And now I'm kind of thinking like, okay, so what do we do with all this?
Right. How do we actually apply it?
Yeah, how do we take these really deep philosophical insights
Yeah.
and turn them into something practical?
Well, the cool thing is,
Yeah.
Kant didn't just give us these abstract theories.
Right.
He gave us really specific advice
Yeah.
for how to live a meaningful life.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
And I think one of the key takeaways, for me at least,
Yeah.
is this idea of continuous learning.
Okay, so we never stop learning.
We never stop learning.
We never stop growing.
Right. And
That resonates with me. I think that resonates with a lot of our listeners too.
I think so too. Yeah.
Because, I think a lot of people who are drawn to this kind of content are lifelong learners.
Absolutely.
They're always looking for new ways to expand their knowledge and
Yeah, they're curious.
Yeah.
They're hungry for knowledge.
And you were talking about this idea of knowledge as this interconnected web.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that
Yeah.
Kant really emphasizes is that learning isn't just about memorizing isolated facts.
It's not just about rote memorization.
Right. It's about making connections
Yeah.
between different ideas.
So like one thing leads to another.
Yeah, I mean, Remember that passage where he talks about how studying geography
Oh, yeah.
can lead to an interest in history,
Okay.
which can then lead to an interest in politics,
So it's like this ripple effect.
and so on and so forth.
Yeah, yeah. You start pulling on one thread,
Right.
and then
You sure
it just unravels this
You're
whole.
pulling on one thread, and it leads you
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see. I see.
this whole other world.
So he's encouraging us
So he's encouraging us to take a more holistic approach
Okay.
to learning.
So not just become an expert in one narrow area,
Right, not just specialize in one thing,
but to really cultivate
to really cultivate
a wide-ranging intellectual curiosity.
Yeah, and I think that's really important.
Especially today.
Especially today, when the world's changing so fast.
Yeah, when everything is so interconnected.
You need to be able to adapt.
Right, and to learn new things.
And to learn new things.
So how do we actually do that?
Well, I think it starts with being intentional about our learning.
Oh, okay.
Not just passively consuming information.
Right, not just scrolling through social media.
Right, not just, binge watching Netflix.
Yeah.
But really
But actively seeking out. Yeah.
New knowledge.
New experiences. New perspectives.
And I think, think about your own life.
Yeah.
What are some areas where you might be able to connect seemingly disparate fields of knowledge?
Okay, so how can you bring together things that maybe don't seem to go together?
Like, what can you learn from art that can inform your understanding of science?
Okay.
Or vice versa.
I like that.
Right. I like that.
How can you bring those different perspectives together?
So it's all about making those connections.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's not just about acquiring knowledge for knowledge's sake.
Right. It's not just about stuffing our brains full of facts.
Yeah. There's got to be a purpose.
There's got to be a purpose.
It has to lead to something.
Right. And this is where we come back to Kant's ideas about moral development.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not enough to just know what's right.
Right.
We have to act on it.
We have to live it.
We have to live it.
Yeah.
Right.
And he saw this as lifelong endeavor.
So it's not like we reach a certain point and then we're done.
It's not like we graduate from morality school.
Yeah, exactly. It's a constant process of refining our moral compass.
Right, of striving to live in accordance with our principles.
Okay, I like that.
And so
how do we actually do that? How do we make
sure? I think it starts with those everyday decisions.
Okay, so the little things matter.
The little things matter. Every time we're faced with a choice, are we going to take the easy way out?
Okay.
Or are we going to do
the right thing?
The right thing.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do we make sure that we're making those choices?
Well, I think it's about asking ourselves those Kantian questions.
What are those? Remind me.
What are the long-term consequences?
Okay, so it's not just about the immediate gratification.
Right.
It's about
what's the impact going to be?
The bigger picture.
On others.
Yeah.
Am I
living in accordance?
Living in accordance with my principles.
My values.
Right.
Yeah, and I think Kant would say.
And he would say.
That by consistently making those good choices.
By consistently acting in accordance with those principles, we actually strengthen our moral character.
It's like a muscle.
It's like a muscle.
Yeah. The more you use it,
you exercise it,
the stronger it gets.
It gets stronger.
Okay.
Right.
So those little choices actually matter.
They matter.
They do matter.
They really do.
Yeah, I like that.
Right. And so I think
it's empowering.
It is empowering.
But it's also a little bit daunting.
It's a little daunting.
Right.
Because
it's on us.
It's
on us to make those choices.
It's a responsibility.
Yeah.
Right.
But I do like that sense of.
And I think for Kant, it wasn't about being perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
It was about.
It's about the journey.
Embracing the process. Of continuous learning.
It's about striving.
Growth.
Yeah. To be better.
Right. Striving to become better versions of ourselves.
Well, it's not just about us.
And it's not just about us. It's about
making the world a better place.
Contributing to a better world.
Right. And that brings us full circle to Kant's idea of education as this.
Brings us back to
transformative force.
Kant's vision
Yeah.
of education.
Shaping not just individuals,
Right, not just individuals,
but society as a whole.
but society as a whole.
Okay.
And he truly believed
Mhm.
in the power of education
To make the world a better place.
to create a more just
Yeah.
and equitable world.
Yeah, that's a beautiful vision.
It is.
And I think that's something that we can all aspire to
Absolutely.
use what we've learned.
Right, to use it.
Our knowledge.
Yeah.
Our skills.
Yeah.
Our moral compass.
Leave the world a better place than we found it.
To make
Yeah.
a positive difference.
And that's a great place to wrap up, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about.
A lot to chew on.
A lot to chew on, exactly.
Yeah.
But as always, the learning doesn't stop here.
Never stops.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to become the best version of yourself.
Until next time.
Until next time.